The blinding, white-hot light radiating from the Celestial Network's containment unit didn't just illuminate the ancient stone cistern, it weaponized the very air. To a mortal like Sealer's, the light was merely an intense, localized glare that forced him to shield his eyes. But to the last true vampire, it was pure, unadulterated agony. The high-frequency radiation emitted by the machine's heavy armor plating was specifically engineered by the tech syndicates to target the unique electromagnetic frequency of ancient immortal biology. It was a synthetic nullification field, designed to scramble the latent psychic energy in his blood, freezing his muscles and rendering his supernatural speed completely useless. The vampire collapsed to one knee, the heavy stone floor cracking beneath the sudden, dead weight of his paralyzed frame. His hands clawed helplessly at the damp dirt, his fingernails digging deep into the earth as his chest scar flared with a terrifying, localized eruption of pain. This wasn't the smooth, cold hum of cosmic resonance he had felt earlier. This was a jagged, tearing sensation that mirrored the exact moment his first trusted ally had plunged a relic weapon into his flesh centuries ago. The phantom memories surged violently behind his eyes, the smell of burning bronze, the sound of tearing muscle, and the agonizing realization of absolute betrayal. The containment unit's proximity alert was actively mocking his trauma, using modern tech to recreate the ancient wounds that had broken his spirit. Warning, the machine's synthesized, multitonal voice boomed again, the sound completely devoid of human emotion. Biological anomaly identified as Class 0 extinction asset. High-frequency suppression grid at maximum capacity, commencing localized thermal purge in 10 seconds. Sealers was thrown backward by the sheer concussive force of the machine's descent, his tattered canvas satchel spilling across the debris. He coughed violently, his lungs filling with the thick, suffocating cloud of pulverized limestone and ancient Tartarian dust. Through the haze, he looked up and saw his savior, the invincible, terrifying predator who had effortlessly dismantled 3 corporate enforcers just minutes prior, now brought to his knees, his body shaking with uncontrollable tremors. The pale skin of the vampire's face was tightly drawn, deep crimson veins spiderwebbing outward from his collarbone and tracing up the line of his jaw. Every human instinct Sealers possessed screamed at him to run. The ceiling was actively collapsing, the blue scanning beams of the upper city were bleeding through the newly formed fissure, and a literal angel of mechanical death was counting down to a thermal purge that would reduce everything in this system to ash. He could easily slip into the narrow drainage pipe behind him and disappear into the lawless labyrinth of the low sector. He had his data port disabled. He was a ghost to the system now. He could survive. As Sealers' hand brushed against the cold, tarnished cylinder of the legacy data capsule lying in the dirt, his gaze locked back onto the vampire's eyes. Even locked in agonizing paralysis, the immortal's gaze wasn't filled with fear. It was filled with a brilliant, unyielding rage, a defiance so ancient and absolute that it made the glittering spires of the upper city look like fragile toys. Sealers felt a sudden, violent spark ignite within his own chest. This creature had given him his mind back. He had promised him a path out of the fear. If Sealers ran now, he would spend the rest of his life dying like a rat in the pipes. "You mechanical piece of trash," Sealers roared, scrambling to his feet with a wild, reckless desperation. He didn't have a weapon, but a lifetime of scavenging in the ruins of the old world had taught him exactly how the elites structured their machinery. Every specialized containment unit utilized a localized ground stabilizer to prevent its high-frequency fields from shorting out its own internal power core. Sealers lunged across the debris, his fingers wrapping around a heavy, discarded iron conduit pipe. With a desperate, screaming exertion, he slammed the iron pipe directly into the glowing blue cooling vent located at the base of the machine's multi-limbed chassis. The impact was deafening. The iron pipe bent violently, but the jagged edge sheared through the thin protective mesh of the vent, piercing the primary coolant line. A geyser of pressurized, supercooled synthetic fluid sprayed outward, instantly coating the machine's lower legs in thick white frost. The containment unit's synthesized voice stuttered, its internal gyroscopes whining in protest as the localized cooling system failed. Error, coolant pressure critical, suppression grid fluctuating, recalibrating. It was only a 2-second disruption, but to an ancient vampire, 2 seconds of system fluctuation was an eternity. The moment the suffocating white light flickered, the paralyzing weight lifting from his muscles, The vampire's eyes flared into a brilliant, predatory crimson. The dark red vapor that had previously curled gently from his fingertips exploded outward like a localized hurricane of concentrated psychic malice. The sheer physical force of his sudden movement shattered the stone beneath his feet as he launched himself forward, completely disappearing from Silas's line of sight. A sharp, metallic screech tore through the cistern. The vampire reappeared directly on top of the containment unit, his bare, pale hands gripping the heavy armor plating of its primary sensor array. With a terrifying display of raw, supernatural strength, he wrenched his arms backward. The thick steel alloy groaned, sparked violently, and then tore completely free, exposing a mass of glowing fiber-optic cables and delicate processing units beneath. The machine spun wildly, its remaining limbs flailing blindly through the dust as it attempted to discharge a lethal electrical arc. One of its pneumatic arms swung outward, the heavy steel fist tracking directly towards Silas's head with enough momentum to crush a human skull into dust. Before the blow could connect, the vampire dropped from the top of the machine, his tattered cloak wrapping around Silas like a shield of absolute darkness. He intercepted the pneumatic limb with his own forearm. The impact sounded like two freight trains colliding, the concussive shockwave blowing the remaining dust out of the cistern. The vampire didn't even flinch. His jaw set in a hard, dangerous line, he used his free hand to grip the machine's arm, twisting it until the internal gears sheared themselves apart. "Silas, grab the capsule and move," the vampire commanded, his voice no longer a low vibration, but a commanding, thundering roar that echoed through the fracturing tunnels. Silas didn't hesitate this time. He scooped up the tarnished cylinder, shoved it deep into his canvas bag, and sprinted toward the dark, unmapped archway at the rear of the cistern. Behind him, the battle reached a catastrophic climax. The containment unit, realizing its primary systems were completely compromised, initiated an emergency self-destruction sequence. The glowing white light of its core began to throb with a volatile, blinding intensity, the air crackling with the scent of ozone and burning plastic. The vampire took one final look at the falling ceiling, his hypervigilant senses mapping the structural collapse in a millisecond. He didn't waste time trying to dismantle the core. Instead, he turned and blurred into motion, grabbing Silas by the collar of his tattered jacket just as the containment unit detonated. The explosion was absolute. A wall of blinding white thermal fire tore through the cistern, instantly vaporizing the stone pillars and collapsing the entire ceiling. Millions of tons of concrete, earth, and modern cyber conduits crashed downward, completely sealing off the upper world and burying the sanctuary forever. The concussive force hurled them deep into the unmapped Tartarian catacombs. They tumbled through the darkness, rolling down a steep, ancient stone incline until they finally crashed against a wall of ancient, solid granite. Silence returned, heavy and absolute, broken only by the faint, slow drip of water somewhere deep in the dark. Silas lay on his back, his entire body bruised and covered in soot. He coughed weakly, his hand instantly reaching down to ensure the canvas satchel was still intact. His fingers brushed against the metal cylinder, and he let out a ragged sigh of relief. He was alive. Against all mathematical probability, he had survived a direct tactical strike from the Celestial Network. A faint, scraping sound caught his attention. Silas looked through the pitch-black gloom and saw the vampire slowly standing up. The tattered cloak was completely ruined, burned away at the edges, and a long, jagged cut across his forearm was leaking a thick, dark golden fluid that didn't look like human blood. But the vampire didn't seem to notice the injury. His eyes were fixed on the ancient granite wall they had crashed against. Silas forced himself up, his muscles aching with every movement. Are you all right?" The vampire didn't answer. He raised his pale hand, gently brushing away the centuries of dirt and modern debris that coated the stone surface. As his fingers traced the deep, precise geometric carvings in the granite, the ragged scar across his chest began to pulse once more. But it wasn't the agonizing burning of the machine's trap, nor was it the cold resonance of Silas's determination. It was a deep, rhythmic, and incredibly powerful vibration, a perfect harmonic match that seemed to echo from the very heart of the stone wall itself. "We are not in the slums anymore, Silas," the vampire whispered, his voice filled with a strange, reverent awe that Silas had never heard before. Silas stepped closer, his eyes adjusting to the absolute dark. As the dust slowly settled, he realized the granite wall wasn't a wall at all. It was a massive, intricately sealed vault door, carved with ancient symbols that predated the city, the tech syndicates, and the corporate gods entirely. And right in the center of the vault door was a deep circular indentation that perfectly matched the shape of the legacy data capsule resting inside Silas's bag. The vampire turned his head, his crimson eyes locking onto Silas with an intense, terrifying clarity. The machine didn't find us by accident. The capsule you stole. It isn't just an archive. It is the key. And we are standing directly at the entrance of the secret vault where my relic weapon has been waiting for the last 500 years. Before Silas could even process the words, a deep, mechanical groan echoed from the other side of the massive stone door, and the ancient symbols began to glow with a faint, dangerous golden light.